For a sustainable future, we need to create a fair and green economy. An economy that is socially inclusive, that is ecologically sustainable, and that is economically viable. Social inclusiveness is often neglected. Therefore, the goal of a sustainable future is likely to fail. We need to bring the social back in.
We should be very careful when we're talking about markets.
Markets make potentially good servants, but they make terrible masters.
These markets for natural resource products are systemic drivers of environmental degradation.
The market paradigm has been increasingly dominant in global environmental policy for at least 20 years.
Debates about how to solve environmental issues are dominated by market-based solutions, financial incentives to save nature. To what extent can we trade nature, and can markets promote social development?
Can markets in nature provide both conservation efficiency and equity or social goals or development objectives?
There are a variety of market mechanisms. For instance, if you're not using your permit to emit carbon dioxide, you can trade it on a carbon market.
An entirely new market was created and created fictitious commodities, things that we can only understand as reductions in something. Well, we have a commodity because something doesn't exist. We reduce a ton of carbon dioxide.
Another example is to pay people upstream to keep it clean, so you can use the water downstream for your business.
Payments for ecosystem services involve the use of market instruments and incentives to persuade landholders to plant trees, not to fell them. The ideal recipient of a PES payment is the guy with a chainsaw who's on the verge of putting it into action.
Or compensating carbon emissions by paying countries to curb deforestation.
RED is a means through which governments, individuals and communities in developing countries can be financially rewarded for reducing emissions from deforestation, forest degradation and enhancement of carbon stocks.
All places have a dreamt-out story to it. A mountain, an island, waterfalls and rivers, all significant to my people.
But in these market mechanisms, the voices of local people and communities are often ignored.
The temporal articulation of this is the social comes after the carbon. We have to sort out the carbon first, and then we can see whether we can make it sustainable in terms of society. And I think that absolutely hits the nail on the head.
We found that RED country donors and recipients are still focused on growth and governance, largely bypassing social poverty reduction issues and social justice issues.
Ironic part is part of the argument that's been put by government and some green groups is that yes, you'll be losing some development rights, but there's going to be this great green economic opportunity.
Market-based conservation can only reinforce inequalities between poorer and wealthier landholders, between urban and rural areas, between the global north and south.
My traditional land extends 80 kilometres along the western coast of Cape York Peninsula. My people reside on this land, which is vast. You could walk all day without seeing another person.
Why have many market-based solutions not succeeded in addressing social dimensions?
No one's going to pay for it because if you're using a market mechanism and something doesn't have a financial value, then it's not included.
Most of the countries in Africa have not taken the advantage of carbon trading. The issue of corruption, then politics, render these programs useless.
We don't see the conditions of production that that pump the oil out the ground. We don't see the conditions of production that go to growing that corn. What we see is the commodity that we just buy in the supermarket.
And to give you an example, when Unilever was interested in the role that palm oil played in its products, it estimated that it would take it 3 years for it to establish which of its products contained palm oil and where that palm oil is entering into those products along the supply chain.
that if you just look at, say, the value of a rainforest plant and reduce that to, or a rainforest, to reduce that to the price that a pharmaceutical company might be willing to pay, you're really just picking a tiny fraction of the present and potential future value of that forest and all it contains and does in a much more equitably developed world.
In Cape York, there's some 60 different pieces of environmental legislation that Aboriginal people need to navigate.
Sand dunes have the spirit of the stingray dreaming from the Wutiti people on the eastern coast of Cape York. Rainforests have the spirit of the cassowary dreaming for the Kukiyalanji, also on the east coast. The wetlands of Aurukun on the west side of Cape York are among the biggest in the world. These areas remain undisturbed through thousands of years of stewardship and guardianship of my people.
Can market incentives result in social development and justice?
Well, I hope our goal is an equitable approach to understanding how we can achieve ecological sustainability, and we're not seeing that right now.
I've looked at these projects. I can see that the few that have succeeded, and some have succeeded in some ways, have succeeded most where market criteria are least applied. They are markets in name only.
I don't think anybody would think that markets always work or that markets always fail and something else will work. Everything fails. Therefore, it's a question of looking to see what the appropriate balance between market, hierarchy, network, solidarity or community might be.
Value is not just a financial metric. It's not just finance. It's a whole bunch of social relations and social understandings of how these projects are put in, that we have to understand what value is in the carbon commodity.
We need to look inside the market as well to see what is being commodified, and I think this is a big issue.
How do we transform the system?
Increase the share of the sub-Saharan Africa in the community development carbon fund.
What we're seeing here is that maybe there's a need for ensuring interaction with local people in a systemic and integral way. And we can't do this and just let the markets run by themselves. We have to govern exactly what we want out of it, and we have to try and understand what we're going to get from that when we put it in the first place.
The most pertinent examples are certification schemes and eco-labelling, eco-taxes and subsidies, and also government regulation and government prohibitions.
Finally, increased institutional support and policy space for currently less powerful forest voices will be needed if equity, rights and social justice are to be considered as the key aspects of the future global climate change regime.
We want a conservation strategy that places traditional owners in the driver's seat.
So realistic climate strategies will need to be based on the recognition of the present and the future values of nature to local populations and to national sustainable goals, not just distant buyers, as well as to wider humanity.
Groups and populations likely to be most harmed by climate change are the least responsible for causing it and have the least resources to cope with the consequences. This is triple injustice, and this is a reality for my people.